I'm being joined by Nigeria's Chief Trade Negotiator, Victor Lehman. Thank you very much, Mr. Lehman, for joining us on the program. We appreciate it.
Chimese, I hope you're good in Lagos.
I'm very well, as you can see. Anyway, Nigeria ratified its membership in the AfCFTA before the December 5 deadline. Now, yesterday, AU members agreed on revised instruments, schedules of tariff concessions, and rules of origin. So what next?
Yeah, that's a good question, Chimese. First of all, let me say that the step to ratify is historic. But as you may recall, we did not sign the agreement immediately due to Mr. President's deliberate, careful and cautious decision. It turned out that that decision was a very good one because it allowed us to engage. It allowed us to deepen the process of inclusivity, familiarizing stakeholders with the content and the subsequent impact of the agreement. And then after that signature zone consultations, we then came back and worked furthermore with stakeholders across board. So what you saw a few days ago in regards to the ratification of the AfCFTA was as a result of that deepened, engaged consultation with stakeholders. And so therefore, it is what a lot of stakeholders expected, because at some point we're now the ones saying that we need to ratify. So we've actually done well in Nigeria by making sure that everyone, critical, strategic, relevant stakeholders, understands and engages with the agreement itself. So it's historic, but now the big work begins. It's historic in the sense that the continent was waiting for Nigeria to join. As you know, we are the biggest market, the biggest economy, and of course, in terms of population, we are also the biggest. So the continent was waiting for us. The world was waiting for us to join. And so joining has actually given the expected lifeblood that the AfCFTA needed. And the continent is now ready to trade with Nigeria. Currently, you have 34 countries, including Nigeria, that have ratified, and then 41 tariff offers, the 41 tariff offers that have so far been submitted at the AUC. But, you know, ratification is one step. Mm-hmm. Taking advantage of the AfCFTA agreement itself is another. That means you need to get the market operators ready. They need to understand how they would start trading on the 1st of January 2021. What would be required of them? They need to understand the implication of the agreement going forward. They need to also understand that the agreement is the first rule-based continental agreement that would provide, or that has provided, a balanced trade relationship across the continent. And that we would play by the rule. That if we play by the rule, we expect economic growth, we expect GDP growth, we expect further deepening domestic engagement, and of course policies as well. We expect job creation. We expect to enhance our welfare gains. We expect to also build capacity on our manufacturers. We expect to build regional global value chains that will create linkages not only within the region or the continental level, but also create linkages into the global market. So it's a lot of work that we need to do. We need to also look at the trade facilitating issues, and we want to make sure that that non-tariff barriers are addressed, because trade facilitation is key. You are looking at making sure the customs is prepared, that the entrenched idea that customs is for revenue generation would now be shifted from revenue generation to making sure that they become the trade facilitator. because the major part of the success story of the AfCFTA would depend on customs efficiency, would depend on mutual administrative assistance, it would depend on cooperation across the region, ECOWAS region, across the continent, that customs would need to work together in a more integrated manner to ensure that goods across borders freely. And of course, the movement of persons as well. And you also want to look at issues such as transport. You want to look at issues such as policies, issues such as building, ramping up capacity for your MSMEs. In particular, access to finance. That finance is less expensive, and making sure that repair it's to businesses, that you wouldn't tell businesses, I give you a loan today and I have to repay in 6 months or 1 year, and making sure that MSMEs that don't even have the capital to start their business, that you don't ask them for heavy collaterals. There should be a way of underwriting MSMEs access to finance and credit. And that's something I think we need to really work. The big work begins. It's a lot of work. Believe you me, it's enormous. It's not a joke. So in order to take advantage of the AfCFTA, to take advantage of the 1.2 billion market size, and of course the 3.4 trillion GDP and over 4 trillion expected investment, a lot of work needs to be done. This is just the beginning, I tell you, Chimezie. We'll just look at 1, 2 years, 3 years down the road and see what happens with all of this excitement that we have. It's a huge, huge work. At the same time, it's a huge opportunity for Nigeria. But we hope, and we are hopeful and we stay optimistic that this will work. But again, it goes beyond hope and optimism. It actually requires work. Thank you.
Absolutely, I agree with you, Mr. Lehman. Now, having listened to you and looking at all of the things you have reeled out that needs to be done, so it's not just about ratifying, it's about getting ourselves ready to take advantage of what AfCFTA presents to Nigeria. Now, you are the trade facilitator. You've mentioned some of the stakeholders in all of this. You talked about customs. You talked about the MSMEs. Of course, we have the manufacturers and all of that, including the government. So as a facilitator of this, how have you tried to create that synergy to make these people understand the intricacies here, understand some of the things they have to understand about this game, let me call it a game, that we are going to? What have your office done to bring all of these people together to make them understand? You talked about the rules there, and perhaps it's the rule of origin there, which of course is the main issue in this particular matter. What my office has done, as you know, my office was created to coordinate, lead, and manage trade negotiations. In addition to that, we need to also ensure that stakeholders understand the content of the agreements, understands the impact of every negotiated agreement and the negotiated outcomes, that they understand how to engage with every agreement that we negotiate and have been negotiated. And that means we need to ensure that they understand the rules. Let me start with the rules of origin. We're working with stakeholders to know that at the moment we have negotiated and agreed on an 81% rules of origin on HS code digit at 81%. And so now what we then need to do is to sit with stakeholders at all the operators across board, not in Abuja, not in Lagos alone, but across the country, because the country needs to take advantage across board. You know, we have over 200 and something million people in Nigeria, perhaps even more than 200 and something. So then we need to look at our trade volume per capita, trade volume per the population that we have. How many people in Nigeria would actually engage in real trade? I'm not talking about raw materials export. I'm not talking about crude oil export. I'm talking about real trade.
semi-manufactured and finished products. How many Nigerians, how many companies in Nigeria would engage with that? So what we need to do is to sit down with them and tell them, this is what we've negotiated. In order for your products to be acceptable as wholly obtained, you need to do A, B, C, D. You need to ensure that your raw materials, for instance, in the production of chocolate, the raw materials are from Nigeria or they're from any part of Africa, in order to take advantage of the tariff-free arrangement or framework that we have put together under the AfCFTA. And we also have to let them know in terms of value addition, the ad valorem principle or the criteria that we have to take into account the value of non-originating material, the VNAP that comes outside of the continent, and how much of that percentage you need in order for it to be accepted. And also have to look at this in terms of wholly originating products. These are the things that you need to do, showing them how to take advantage of the rules of origin that we've put together. What the rules of origin that we've put together would allow us to do if it is strictly adhered to. It will allow us to industrialize. It will allow us to prevent the abuse of our markets by third countries. It will allow us to ensure that people don't just bring, say, suits from outside of the country and just put a button and put a label and say made in Nigeria or made in Cameroon or made in Benin or made in or South Africa. There has to be much more than putting a button on a shirt. There has to be much more than putting just a brand name on a suit. It has to be more than that. A lot has to go in order for that product to qualify to be sold or to benefit from the preferential tariff treatment that we have put together under the AfCFTA. And apart from that, you also encourage international investors that want to take advantage of what we have done at the Continental level to come in and set up shop. Be it in Nigeria, be it anywhere in Africa, they need to come and set up shop here, not us importing from outside to sell within the AfCFTA area. We wouldn't do that, and then we would also work with them to let them understand what it means, standard and quality, specification requirements. This is not only critical or fundamental within the AfCFTA market, but it's also important within domestic markets and of course the ECOWAS region, and more so at the global markets. If you recall, I mean, we've had some of our products rejected in EU. I mean, within the AGUA framework because of quality. So my office is particularly very interested in what MSMEs would do to ensure quality, to ensure standardization. If you are going to produce, say, for instance, the PPEs that are being used, that are being required all over the world now, then we have to look at the specification. We have to look at the width, the length, the thickness, and all of that. You have to make sure that it aligns with global requirement. It aligns with global best practice. So you need to be able to do this going forward, and also need to be able to let them understand that there's a need to move away from informality to formality, or formalization of trade. Not for the purposes of taxation, but for the purposes of government policies, right government policies, and interventions to be made, because without critical, valid, and of course, trust, data that can be trusted, there is no way that government would be able to intervene in a much more efficient and effective way. There has to be that data that government can then use to make decisions, government can then use to make policies, government can then use to make interventions in key, practical, required areas. So that needs to be done. And we also need to be able to work with people at the ports It's not just the customs. We need to ensure that our ports work. I mean, we utilize up to at least 70% or 80% of our ports capacity. At the moment, we are not utilizing the ports. I'm not sure we're utilizing up to even 40% capacity. We need to also ensure that in terms of trucks and vehicles that carries that transportation is top notch. And we also need to be able to work together to see how we can remove other non-tariff barriers, and of course tariff barriers as well, and technical barriers to trade as well. We need to see how those can be addressed. And I wouldn't say just custom, because in Nigeria there are lots of other components that impede trade rather than enhance trade. For instance, I mean, there was a video I watched. I saw the police stop a truckload of chicken overnight, and they all died. We all need to work with all of these components, all of these operators, for them to understand that every action that they take, if that action is inimical to trade, if that action impedes the ability of traders to be able to trade, those actions would actually impede on the kinds of jobs we want to create. It will impede on the economy. It will impede it will impede on the cost of trade as well. I can see you want to stop me, Chimeze. That's fine.
Absolutely, we really don't. Time is running so fast. I wish we had so much time to talk about this. But before I let you go, yeah, we understand that there's been this call for the ratification to go through the National Assembly. Is that correct? And should that be so?
I think we need to understand the process in Nigeria. Ratification is an executive process. It's purely an executive process. Ratification. It's purely at the matter of Mr. President. He takes a division in council with his cabinet. It's purely his. So after the ratification process, what we now need to do is to domesticate the AfCFTA, which is now the legislator. The legislator that has that mandate to domesticate. It will have to go to the National Assembly, to both chambers, both Houses of Reps, and of course the Senate for domestication. But in terms of ratification, it's purely that of the executive, and I think that should be clear to everyone. And that's the way we operate. In some countries, it's different. You have to work with the parliament. I know that in South Africa, that's different. And I think also in Cameroon and some other countries that you have to go to the parliament for a particular instrument or treaty to be ratified. But in Nigeria, it is a different ballgame entirely. It is purely at Mr. President's prerogative. And of course, domestication then moves on to the legislator. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Victor Lehman. I always appreciate your time, and we're always happy having you on the show. Yes, AfCFTA takes off January 1, and I'm going to keep a date with you on this show. I mean, everyone is hearing now. January 2, Mr. Lehman, I'm going to have you on this particular show. We have to talk more about this. Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, but I hope you have something to trade on the 1st of January.
Well, we'll talk about that. Deal or no deal?
You better do.
All right. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.